While many are still recovering and reeling from the awesome Animal Crossing explosion that happened on Friday, I've got some breaking news for you all on the Switch hardware front. And it was too good to save for tomorrow. Like, think of this as a special weekend GMM report. You'll still get a regular episode on Monday, but I had to tell you about this tonight because it's so darn tantalizing. A big leak just dropped that Nintendo is working on a digital-only new Nintendo Switch iteration, which is kind of insane from a company that still uses cartridges. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. Make sure to smash that like button if you enjoy these videos, and let me know your take on this crazy development in the comments down below. I'm gonna break it all down for you. All right, this comes from Nick Special Ed Baker. We've covered his rumors and leaks on the channel before. He works for Xbox Era, and he's kind of in the know on all fronts. All right, stuff from Microsoft, from Sony, and from Nintendo. He's gotten a lot right. He's gotten a few things wrong. That's just kind of how it goes. But let me tell you that this one popped up on the popular Reddit subreddit r/gaming leaks and rumors, and a mod there said that Special Ed verified his claims and his information and showed them where he got it from, and they say it looks really legit. And like, this is a valid, credible leak. So still some grains of salt, but maybe nowhere near as many as normal. All right, basically Special Ed says that Nintendo is working on a new digital-only version of a Switch. Now this is where it gets really interesting because he's not sure which Switch. And there's 3 scenarios here. We're gonna dive into each of them. All right, but let me tell you up front, the 3 scenarios are: 1, that this is a digital-only version of an already existing Switch. 2, Nintendo is working on a brand new Switch and it's digital-only because of how darn well their eShop has sold and performed this console cycle. 3, they're going to release the next Switch iteration in both a normal physical and digital form and also a digital-only version, very similar to what we have going on with the PlayStation 5. Now, in any of these scenarios, this is really, really interesting, and it's really kind of strange for Nintendo, a company that is so rooted in their past and their history and on making things how they've always made them. Going to an only digital console just seems kind of about face for the big end. Then again, they're trying to level their game up and kind of reach modern era in a lot of different ways. Maybe not the $50 Nintendo Switch expansion pack, but in many other ways, they have turned a corner this generation. So if we look at the first scenario, a digital-only Switch matching up with a current Switch makes perfect sense, right? If they were gonna release an OLED that was digital only and chop $50 off the price, that's a pretty interesting proposition. And that's a totally possible one in my eyes. They could release a Nintendo Switch OLED digital, charge $300, and still be able to sell that super sexy screen to many portable players. Now, I want to be clear that Special Ed was very clear to say he's not going to align with one scenario or the other. It could be any of these. And there's also this idea right now that maybe a digital-only Nintendo Switch Lite could be coming out. And perhaps they're going to fuse the OLED screen onto the Lite, make it digital only to save cost on the hardware front, and then make it the same price as it already is, $200. That's a pretty insane offer if you consider getting an OLED screen, albeit on a smaller form factor, albeit on a Switch that doesn't switch. I still think that's a pretty sweet proposition, especially at that lower price point. Now, they could just make a digital-only OG Switch, but I feel like Nintendo is about ready to leave the OG Switch in the past. So if it is a currently existing Switch, it would probably be the OLED or the Lite or like a hybrid of the two. Now, scenario 2 is the one that I'm going to dismiss, and Special Ed was actually quick to dismiss this one as well. Like, he went fully dismiss it, but he basically did, saying Nintendo would be crazy to make their next Switch, like the Switch 2, digital only, abandoning all the sales and all the history and all the players that prefer physical games, cartridges, would be kind of crazy. In fact, it might be suicidal from a business standpoint, and no console has gone all digital with much success, at least as far as I'm aware of. I know that digital sales are really important to Nintendo, as they're important to many other major platform holders, and they are rising the ranks in terms of the equation, the breakdown, physical versus digital, but I don't think you can sell a mainline Nintendo system that is digital only right now. maybe years down the line, I feel like we've been saying that for generations, I still don't think you can reach the kind of success Nintendo wants to reach and has achieved with the Switch by making Switch 2 digital only. Also, then all of your games would basically evaporate. Any cartridge you already have would become worthless, and that would be one insane fan backlash that I don't think Nintendo wants to deal with. They got thousands of dislikes on their $50 expansion pack video. Imagine how many dislikes if they told you the next Switch wasn't compatible with any of your games because it couldn't even accept cartridges. Now, this would alleviate the problem of cartridges that can't store as much as like a PlayStation 5 disc, but I don't think Nintendo goes this route, and neither does Special Ed. What seems like the most likely outcome here is that the next Switch, the coveted Switch Pro or the Switch 2 or whatever you want to believe, the 4K version of Switch that is coming next in 2022 or 23 or whenever, that they will release a digital version and a physical version of this system. And that would allow them to come in at 2 price points. And if we're thinking ahead here, the OLED's $350, so the PlayStation 5 is $500, maybe the Switch 4K is $450, and then the digital is $400, and then they're undercutting the PS5 and the Series X, but they're right there at the digital, or maybe they drop the OLED to $300 by that point, and then they got the physical at $400, and the digital comes in and replaces the $350 slot. That's a lot to think about and a lot of different numbers that we can save for a different day, but I do think a digital-only Switch and a physical/digital Switch makes sense. If you are able to save price for people, it's a very valid option on the PlayStation side of things, and maybe they see that they've had success with their sort of 2-pillar format, and maybe Nintendo wants to go that route. Remember, digital benefits Nintendo very nicely. They get to decide the prices, they get to sell it, and they get to sort of be master and commander of your game's library. As a player, I would always prefer to have the option to go digital or physical, but that will probably come with a price bump from here on out. Whichever platform you decide to align with, or if you decide to buy many, you're gonna have to decide if physical media is important enough to you to pay a bit of a premium. But I will say that majority of my Switch games are digital. And for the Switch in particular, how often I play that thing portably, how nice the OLED screen looks, I would heavily consider a digital-only new Nintendo Switch 2. I really play that thing primarily with my fixture grip and my Pro Controller. I play that thing portably more than I play it docked. And for that reason, having my library always with me, every aspect of it, every game downloaded digitally, that's really convenient. Not having to swap out cartridges is really convenient. And hey, with all the cloud versions that keep popping up for games like Guardians of the Galaxy and Kingdom Hearts and possibly Alan Wake Remastered, those can only be downloaded. And so maybe it's fine to have a system that only accesses the eShop. Where it gets dicey is you don't get to take advantage of as many sales from retailers, but I will say Nintendo has gone hog wild on the huge eShop sales this generation, and I would feel more confident investing in that ecosystem than I ever have any other generation from Nintendo. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, what if this is the Switch Pro and it's a 4K system that to put in the better chips, they had to take out the cartridge slot. I just am kind of dismissing Switch Pro right now. I really think it's like the current Switch lineup and then the next Switch. That's where my headspace is at. I'm super curious where your headspace is at, and if you would invest in a digital-only Switch. Like, is that something that's interesting to you? If you could save $50 on the next Switch, or hey, if you could save $50 on the OLED, Nintendo decided to release a $300 OLED that was only digital, would you do it? Or do you think it's dumb and you just want the option to go physical or digital and think Nintendo should stick with that split path where you can decide if you're gonna grab a cartridge or a code? And in terms of the validity of this leak, I personally don't think it's all that crazy. I know Nintendo is often archaic, but PlayStation's done it, Nintendo's trying to move forward, and the next system that drops in a year or two, like, it makes sense that this one would wanna be forward thinking. And Nintendo knows their digital numbers. Remember, when we get NPDs, when we get sales figures, it don't include Nintendo's digital. They are the holder of that file. And for all we know, they see that dang, Metroid Dread just dropped like 70% of its sales on digital, and maybe this is much less of an issue or even a decision than I'm making it out to be, or Special Ed is making it out to be, or even you're making it out to be. Maybe Nintendo knows that many of their players just prefer grabbing their games digitally. The underbelly of this that's also really interesting to me is the possibility for Nintendo to release another new Switch SKU that once again is not the Switch Pro. Like, if they're ready to come out with an OLED Lite or a digital-only OLED, oh my goodness gracious, this really is becoming the iPhone era of gaming, where they're constantly iterating, revising, and releasing new hardware to appeal to the hardcore who have to have it all with new colorways and new options, and then to provide just many different points of entry to try to get you into their ecosystem. Now that's another reason I think a digital-only new Switch is completely off the table. They don't want to splinter their audience. They built up nearly 100 million Switch fans, and to say sayonara to that would be silly, would be corporately stupid. And so they won't do that because at the end of the day, Nintendo wants to make money, and I assure you that they will make the Switch 2 backwards compatible, that they will make it have the option to use your cartridges that you've spent 5, 6, or maybe 7 years investing in that library. You want to play Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 3? They're gonna make that possible, and they're not gonna make it only if you've downloaded. They're gonna allow physical media to work. So I'm very eager to see how this develops, if we start getting rumblings of a digital-only current Switch, or if as more and more of the Switch 2 comes into focus for 2022 or beyond, we start hearing that Nintendo is gonna go both ways. I think that'll be a fun decision and fun debate to have as we get closer, like, which way do you go with your Switch? And a lot of it will depend on how you play. I have a feeling. If you're more portable, you'll probably lean digital, and if you're more home console, then you'll probably lean physical. At least that's how I see it, but how do you see it? Are you a portable player that still wants to carry around a pouch of cartridges? Or are you a homebody that would still rather have everything digital? Please let me know in the comments down below how you think this could go down and how it would affect you. And of course, I'll keep you posted with any new developments or new parts of this leak, and we'll have to pay attention and see what Nintendo decides to do next. Until that time though, everybody, make sure to hit that like button on your way out. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe, staying healthy, staying happy, and staying positive out there. I appreciate you more than you know. Couldn't do this without you, and can't wait to get back to another week of Good Morning Mario. Until that time though, everybody, love you a lot. Thanks again for watching. SwitchForce out.